In this lesson, I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, I am going to create some sort of uniformity between our pages and our index page, in that when I changed the colour for those columns in the last lesson, well, you'll remember that I did suggest that what you could do with individual pages is change those column colours to a different colour to the index page and in fact to all the other related pages so that they display a degree of independence. However, for this lesson, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I did in our index page, in that I am going to make those columns the same colour as my menu navigation. So, I'll start off by opening up my Shops folder, and then double-clicking on the Shops HTML file that resides inside, which of course opens it up for us. Now I'm going to move to the foot of our page, so I'll click here in my vertical scroller. Okay then, so as a quick reminder, if I place my cursor somewhere within this column, and I'll randomly place it here within this text, then I can come down to my Properties Inspector and click on the CSS Designer button, which as a result we now know opens up our CS Designer panel with all its related tabs. Well, we want to come up to this one, the Selectors tab, and you'll remember what we're looking for. We're looking for the one called Aside. Now I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse just to move down until I find it. I could have used that search field above, but seeing as it's right at the top, here it is, Aside, well, I'll select it first of all, and then move right down here to the foot of this panel where it says background colour, and I'll click in that little square there. Actually, just before I do, I need to move to the top of our page so I can see the green background colour of our menu. Okay, now I'll come back down here, and I will now click on it to open up my colour palette, and then, well, as you remember, if I select the colour picker here, I can move across to the background for our menu, that colour green there, and once I left click, then that is the shade of green that we are now going to use. And to confirm it, if I left click somewhere over here in a blank area, then immediately, as we've seen before, this background colour updates for us. We're not quite finished though. I'll scroll right down to the foot of our page. Remember, within this content area, we still do see this sandy brown colour just behind in the background. And you remember what we do? If I left click here and then select this tag, div.sidebar1, then once more I can move over to the Properties panel within the CSS Designer tab, and where it says background colour there, well, I'll go through the same process. I'll click on here to open up our colour palette. I'll choose the colour picker, and then move across here and select the green once again. And as soon as I click in a blank area, that now becomes accepted. Finally, because I want to make my footer the same colour, I'll come down here, place my cursor within it, and then with the footer tag just below, when I select this, here within our Properties Inspector, I can choose the background colour by clicking on here, and then doing exactly the same process as before. So that's our green chosen there. I'll left click to deselect and accept the green colour for our footer. Now you'll remember in the previous lesson we did make the green of our columns at the left and at the right a slightly lighter shade of green. Well, I've not done that for this lesson. Maybe I will change it a little bit later on, but that's a reminder of the process. Okay then, so my next step is to add some textual information. And I want to add this textual information as a list. Now Dreamweaver does provide us with a couple of tools to either bring a textual list in as what's known as what's an unordered list or as an ordered list. I'll show you the difference in a second. First of all, I'm going to open up a Microsoft Word document. Here it is. Now don't worry if you don't have Word. I'll be showing you an alternate way to create a list a little later. Now you are going to find this document within your Assets folder. I recommend, if you have Word, to place it in your text folder that you created in your site folder. I've also placed it within a folder called Text within our site. And I've done this because I want to show you a function within Dreamweaver that allows you to bring in textual content from a program such as Microsoft Word in the format that you've got it formatted here. Okay, so here is a list of food outlets within the village. Let's move back over to Dreamweaver. For my example in this lesson, I want to place that list below this photograph. Therefore, what I'll do is I'll left click at the end of our dummy text here, and I'll hit my Enter key on the keyboard a couple of times to move down the page a little. And also so that I can see a visual distinction between this photograph and that dummy text. With the list that we are about to bring in, I'm going to place a horizontal rule right across this area. And we do it by coming up to the Common tab and then selecting this button here, this horizontal rule button. Once I click it, well, now you can see down here we have this horizontal rule stretching across this content area. Okay then. Now I'm going to bring in my list below this horizontal rule, so I'll left click just below it to place my cursor there, and then I'm going to import that Microsoft Word document. And I do this by coming up to File, and then rolling down here to where it says Import. I fly out to the right, and then simply choose our third option down, Word Document. Once I select it, then this Import Word Document dialog opens up, and there is our file. As I say, you'll find it within the text folder within your assets folder. So once I select it, all I need to do is click on Open. And immediately, as we can see now, the text that was included in that Word document now gets brought in here, in the format that it was formatted as within Word. For those of you who don't have Word, I've created a text file that you can open and copy, so you don't have to type all of this. So that's one way of creating a list automatically here within Dreamweaver, but of course what we had to do was create that list ourselves manually within Word. What I want to do now is show you another method that makes the creation of a list that much easier directly here within Dreamweaver. Just before we do that though, let's preview this. And another way of previewing our site is by coming up to this button here. Once you left click on it, then you'll see some browser options. Well, I'm going to go for my third one there, Preview in Internet Explorer. Now this should have automatically opened up my browser, but because I've made some changes to my page and I've not saved the page, well, Dreamweaver is asking me to save the page first of all before it can display this page within the browser. So within this resulting dialog, I'm going to click Yes to save those changes. And then now I can see my browser, and here is our page. And there is the list that we've just brought in directly from that Microsoft Word document. However, as I mentioned a moment ago, this list, formatted like this, was already done within Word. I want to show you that different method now I alluded to earlier, whereby Dreamweaver can do this for us. So I'm going to close my browser by clicking on the cross here. And then my next step, first of all, would be to remove all this text. But because I don't want to type it in manually, I'm going to save it within our clipboard. So I'll left click at the end and highlight all the text that I do want to save, ready for me to paste back in a moment. Well, by highlighting all that text, I'll run up to Edit up here and then drop down to where it says Copy. Okay, so that's now done. That's now saved in my clipboard. So I can remove this text, and one way of doing this is right-clicking on it and then running down to Cut. You can only just see it at this screen resolution, but it's there, trust me. Okay, done. Let me walk you through then what we need to do when we want to implement a list. In fact, what I'll do is I'll show you how to implement an unordered list, simply using the tools that we'll find down on our Properties Inspector. First of all, I want to place my cursor below this text. So if I move my cursor to the end of the text and then hit Enter, then this is the position that I want my unordered list to be placed at. Now let's work our way down to the Properties Inspector. And the two buttons I'm referring to are these two here. This first one, and this is the one we're going to use in a second. If we implement this, then we create what's known as an unordered list. And an unordered list will be a textual list that gets indented slightly just after a small black circle. You'll see what I mean in a second. But also notice, just to the right, there is another option here. And this option allows us to create what is known as an ordered list. And an ordered list is pretty much the same as an unordered list. However, an ordered list will have numbers at the beginning of all your textual content. Anyway, let me select this first button, this unordered list button, and once I do, well, you'll now see that slightly indented dot, which means I can now paste all that text that we saved to our clipboard a moment ago just after this dot. Therefore, one method of doing this is come up to Edit and then roll down to the Paste option. Okay, so there is my text now pasted in. However, there is a slight problem because we haven't done this manually. What's happened is we've brought that text in, however, there is only one of those dots at the top there next to Rob's Cafe. Well, I want my unordered list to contain lots of those dots at the beginning of every single one of those food outlets there. Perhaps with a short list like this, maybe manually entering the text would have been quicker. However, seeing as we've got the text like this, let me show you how we can rectify it quickly. If I place the cursor just after Rob's Cafe, and then hit the Enter key on my keyboard, well, now you'll see I've got another one of those little black dots, which means once I hit the Delete key on my keyboard, that second entry there, Higson Deli, moves up into that space. I'm going to do that again. I'll place the cursor after Deli. I'll hit my Enter key to create another list position, and then hit the Delete key to bring Jenny's Coffee Shop into that position. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing for my other two entries here, the Turkish food and the meat pie shop. Okay, and with my cursor after meat pie shop there, if I hit Enter now, well, of course I'm going to create another one of these bullet points. Well, I want to remove that one, so simply coming back down to our Properties Inspector and clicking once more on this Unordered List button, well, that now deactivates the function and removes that final bullet point that we've just added in. Okay then, so that's us done. That's how we create a list here within Dreamweaver, and we've seen how we can import information from another program such as Microsoft Word. And we also started this lesson by changing the colour of our columns to match our menu background colour as well.